Looking at a mock-up of the stained glass window installation for Nick Markell. I've mocked up the bottom left-hand corner, both of the glass and the frame, and also of the existing window opening in the building. This is the exterior glass. Here is that aluminum extrusion. This is 1 5/8 inches here. I'm not sure what this dimension is, but this is the drywall surface. This is aluminum glass. And we talked about having a simple wooden frame with a groove cut in it, slightly oversized. Here's a representation of the stained glass. The stained glass slides up and in. Bottom rail is attached and secured, and it's lifted into place and installed. And what I've used is a couple of barrel nuts. These are steel. There's a common 1/4 by 20 inch thread, so it's all very common materials. And the idea would be that you slide this in. I'm currently showing this with a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch lead extrusion on the perimeter. I'm not sure what it is, but we can obviously set this dimension to whatever is needed. It's slid in. You attach the bottom rail, 2 screws per corner. And because it's a steel machine thread, it's very secure, it's very rigid, and it also allows people to, you can run these screws in and out as many times as needed. If you're running a wood thread in, it can get sloppy and worn over time. These steel machine threads can be obviously run in hundreds of times. The installation was going to be a little undersized so that there's room to shim it, and then that gap is closed off with an applied molding. I'm assuming that would be shot into place on site with a small pin nailer or brad nailer, and that's how that installation would be finished off. I wondered about trying to make it easy to handle the installation on site. And so I'm going to rotate it to represent the lower right-hand corner. And I'm wondering if one way to handle it would be to leave a portion at least of these side stops off. You could run the glass in, there'd be stops up here. Put the bottom rail on, there'd be stops here. You could even put in a couple of temporary stops, blocks, to make sure the window is held securely while you lift it into place. You lift it in and then install it, and then you could screw, because the stop is off here, you screw in from the side, and then you come back with a stop that has something like, here's a finish washer. And then you apply the rest of your stops, the side stops, and that covers up those installation screws, and then you blind that opening with your final molding there. This makes the installation easier. Also, in an institutional environment, I find that memory is short. You can tell somebody how to do something or how to access something or service it, and it gets forgotten pretty quickly. But this is out there. It's obvious yet somewhat discreet, and it's an obvious intuitive clue as to how to get to the window and how to service it. The other thing we talked about was what the sight lines were going to be, because this is up and high and set perhaps in a deep window well. If some of the sight lines to that bottom blue border get impeded when you're looking from down below. And so I don't know, I didn't have the dimension of where that sill is in the building, but I set this up in my shop up on a ledge at 10 foot high, and I experimented with moving the frame in and out, and that does have an impact on your sight lines when viewed from below. The deeper it's set, the less of this blue border will be visible. The other thing that impacted it significantly, and I'm showing this cross section being 1 5/8, that's the dimension of the aluminum extrusion. This dimension is about 3 inches. It felt comfortable, gives me plenty of room for 2 good, solid, secure screw connections. But at this dimension, this corner has a fairly significant impact on the sight lines. So I'm wondering if we might want to consider a shape on this bottom rail, beveling it or canting it down, and that opens up clearer sight lines to that bottom blue glass border. So anyway, however it's handled, I think probably need to consider both where it's placed in the opening and the shape of that bottom rail will also impact the sight lines to the glass. So there's some ideas. I've got a sketch of this issue I'm going to send in a separate email, but there's some things to think about. We can have a talk. I'm willing to meet anytime. I can certainly meet with Lucas. It's convenient for me. But anyway, have a look at this. Let me know if it's on the right track.